with this introduction, uh, I think it summarizes most of what I had wanted to say, but I just want to review a couple of main points for you in terms of when you'll hear him, you'll be thinking about this, that he did do both degrees at Salem State. Chief King did both the undergraduate and the graduate. He worked for 25 years at the Salem Police Department, and I had said some of his most important work was in the area of community liaison there, community relating to people in the community. And he set up this innovative juvenile rehabilitation project with the Salem Probation Department and with the Plummer House, a youth facility. And he's taught as an adjunct for our department, which is, you know, certainly we don't have so many alumni who are doing that at present at all. But he considers it a privilege. We consider it a privilege to have him doing it. And he has as a goal to foster the development of future leaders in law enforcement. Okay, so I wanted to say, I'd like to say a few words about each of the guest speakers, and then we'll have them give. I had given them a set of questions, by the way, last week for them to think about in terms of addressing us today. And then, as I said, I would like all of you to jot down follow-up questions to ask them when the presentations are completed. Okay, moving now to introducing William Sharp. He again shares something in common with Chief King in that both of them did both 2 degrees at Salem State, both the bachelor's and the master's degree. Um, Bill Sharp went on to do a PhD at Northeastern University in criminal justice, but then he turned that into a really blooming career, long-term career of 29 years with the Lynn Police Department. So again, he's going to be one of our speakers on the local level, and he served really in almost all roles of that were possible in Lynn Police, starting off as a patrol officer, then patrol sergeant, a lieutenant in charge of internal affairs and public information, an officer in charge of training, SWAT operations as an operator, team leader, and supervisory team leader. Currently, he has the position of captain of professional standards at the Lynn PD, and he's overseen a huge variety of areas within the department that includes um, training and hiring and internal affairs, media relations, video evidence, which I've had some contact with him in terms of a project for my research methods course when I teach it. I had students go and watch films involving officer use of force and then analyze the data that they saw in the film. So that's been an interesting project to work on together with him. So he's had, as you can see, multiple responsible experiences in the Lynn PD. So really, both speakers in the two local departments, really, their duties have spanned a wide variety within the department, so they can address and will address, I'm sure, for us today, all different aspects of law enforcement that someone like yourselves might encounter when not only apply to the force but go through the academy and then start your work. Okay, and just a few words now about Nathan Montero, who I'm very pleased is here from the Massachusetts State Police. He has worked for them for 12 years, and he's currently in the recruitment office. So I'm sure he's going to speak about some of his earlier experiences as well, but it'll give us a bird's eye view of what that position is like. Many of our students are interested in that as a possible internship placement with the Massachusetts State Police, and I'm sure it's going to be a very, a valuable presentation. But as I'm saying, You should please jot down any questions because we will have time at the end for hopefully for as many questions as we have, uh, as you have in follow-up. Okay. So first, if we could start with Chief King, I will happily turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Metchek. So good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? All right. Um, and so paralleling my law enforcement career is a career in academics, and I do laugh. I've known Dr. Metchek as long as I've been a police officer, which is in May 2nd will be 30 years. And I may have, if I took some of his sage advice after a class, I may not even have become a police officer. So I don't know if you remember this, but somewhere after it was either statistics or research method, you suggested that I got out of policing or stopped doing policing because I had a decent mind for stats and research methods. And I said, as well as I prepared and well as I did in the class, I didn't see myself altering course, but I do remember you slightly trying to sway me into the academic career. That I think, for the last 5 years or so, I've been able to give back a little bit. I say 5 years in academics. I was training in policing for over 20 years. And so you have a lot of information that I can give on that intro for the questions, and I'm going to try to cover a lot of stuff, but also not dominate the time. I will say this, Nathan, if you take anybody from Marblehead, Viking or not, I will find you, and I'm sure Bill would do the same.
Right.
We are a very right now the state of law enforcement. And I'll go over a lot of things, but I'm going to tell you the state of law enforcement for the people listening to this has never been more opportunistic. And so, if you're interested in becoming a police officer in the Commonwealth, there's never been a more opportunistic time in the history, just because of the availability and the current structure of hiring. So, it's kind of interesting. But as I mentioned, I'm coming up on my 30th year, May 2nd. I started as a reserve in Salem and went through the entire gamut of jobs. So you go from reserve to patrolman to sergeant to lieutenant, captain. I was acting chief for almost a year. There's a lot that goes into that, and perhaps I can talk a little bit about it. But I really got everything that I knew about the profession itself from my mentors and friends at the Salem Police Department. Ironically, I was in Middleton or at the Sheriff's Department for about a year part-time before I was full-time with the Salem Police Department. And so I do have experience, at least in a part-time basis, working up at the jail as a correctional officer. And while I was waiting to go full-time in Salem, I did nearly 3 years at North Shore Community College as a campus police officer, which, for me was a really good experience. It ironically did a couple things. It helped pay for my degrees, at least my bachelor's degree, because I worked for the state and was able to get, in the case of North Shore Community College, a tuition and a fee waiver. I don't regret my time at North Shore. I went to a state special police academy that's held by the state police. That kind of gave me my first experience of a paramilitary structure. So a lot of people before they get into law enforcement have been in the service and have a little bit of an idea of what that paramilitary structure is. I didn't. And so having gone to the police academy up at New Braintree kind of got me acclimated to that before I went to the full-time one. And so, that's a little bit about my policing roles. The questions that you provided are probably could go on for quite a bit, but you asked what motivated me to pursue a career in law enforcement, and has that motivation stayed and has it changed over the years? And then you ask if I have any regrets about making the career choice. So I have absolutely no regrets at all about choosing a career in policing. Um, I would say that you have to be, um, I do call it a calling when I swear new officers in, or I do talk to people when I interview them for the job, because you do have to have something that's calling you to put yourself above others, to put yourself in harm's way while others are perhaps going the other way. And you have to be able to sacrifice sometimes your own wellness and your own other things in life like family because it's a tough job as it relates to what you're doing to get the position. Now, does it give back? It gives back tremendously. It gives back in many ways, and I'll go into those. But when Bill and I first started, it was not financially the give back that you would think. It was a fair and hardworking job that you could make a fair living. I've said it's the time for opportunity for the people on this Zoom. Well, it's also the time to make some money because I don't know of lots of degrees that you get out with a bachelor's and a master's, and you make anywhere from 85 to $100,000, and then the opportunity to make another 50 to 100 more. That's what some of the situations that you have here that was a little bit different when we first started. But you have to have that calling for the position. I ironically started out as an engineering major at UMass. I didn't realize that that meant you had to go to every class and you couldn't do things like watch the Red Sox, when they were in the ALCS with the Oakland A's. And you had to study your butt off. And so I joke about that, but I joke about my commitment to academics was that I did become committed to it, but I realized that engineering wasn't for me. I realized that the prospect of being inside of an office or a lab or whatever the situation was, without the ability to kind of get out, move, interact, wasn't going to be for me. And it didn't matter that I was good at math and science in high school. And many of you on this Zoom will realize that there are skills that you have that translate over to policing. I didn't know it at the time, and so I really do. I appreciate those times. And two of my three kids are engineers. One's a software engineer. One's about to graduate from UMass, and she's going to have a degree in mechanical engineering. So maybe engineering was something, but it just wasn't for me. And so no regrets about the job that I chose and the position that I kind of put myself in to develop. In terms of like my motivations and how it's changed over the years, I would say that as I've developed a little bit into my career, academics has been a big part of that. And I've been given lots of opportunities, right? So I think Bill and I share a same path. Lynn's a little bit bigger than Salem, but there are lots of opportunities to really find places of interest that you can make a difference from the different units you're in. Dr. Medchek, you mentioned juvenile law, which in juvenile justice, which I became very interested in, and community engagement, community policing, which was a really good opportunity. And so, a little bit what motivated me, like every other officer that gets out of the academy to go catch bad guys, turned into the reality is how do I help anybody on a call in the best way possible, right? So these are the things that you do. And I really did like being a patrol officer. So I'm not a policeman anymore. Chief of police is not really a police officer anymore. I say that begrudgingly many times because it's the joy of being a police officer is much different than it is in being a chief. And I do like this job, but I really did like working the street. I liked working and doing investigative work, doing crime work, doing finding solutions to things that didn't necessarily have on their face solutions. And so, I really did and was fortunate to get those opportunities. And as you get into a career, right, leadership roles, different things like that develop. I for sure was given opportunity to develop in a leadership role through the department. And sometimes you don't know when that's going to come, and it did. And I went with it. So I did kind of change my path in terms of what motivated me. And that was more likely the department and the culture and the people that worked for me rather than, what particular interests I had for myself. And so, those are a little bit on the first couple questions. And I think that in the interest of letting some other people talk, I'm going to stay at just the first couple questions, Dr. Metchek, if that's okay. And then after Bill and Nathan talk, maybe we can get into the other ones.
Well, actually, I mean, we have plenty of time
You want
because
me to
the
just
class,
go?
yeah, the class does continue beyond
Okay.
3:30. So,
All right.
yeah, no, I
All
think
right.
it's fine.
Okay, then I'm going to
Yeah.
keep going. So,
Yeah.
can you describe stages of your career and when you had different choices for career advancement? How did you decide on which direction to go? So, I think that when you go through different ranks, it's an important part of career growth in policing. When an opportunity to take an exam presents itself, when you feel you're ready, you should start to take the exams. Um, I will say one thing about my advancement that I appreciate, and everybody has a different opinion and path, is that I was in each rank for a pretty good number of years, right? So I was almost a patrolman for about 10. I was a sergeant for 5. I was a lieutenant for 5. The only rank that I didn't spend a lot of time in was captain, and that was a little over a year. And then I've been either a chief or an acting chief for about 6 years. So kind of understanding those roles takes a lot of kind of hard work, determination. What I would say is that it never comes instantaneous, right? So everybody wants to be the detective right away. Everybody wants to be the boss right away. This is a career that respects knowledge and experience, and I would say that anybody that thinks that it's a little bit different than that would might struggle with it, but you need that growth in each position. So, what are the best parts of the typical law enforcement officer day, and what are the most difficult? So, for me, every day brings something new, and I facetiously will tell you again, I'm not really a police officer anymore, but you know, it doesn't matter what role I've been in. You literally can make the difference in someone that you meet's life in a positive way, and you literally can make a difference in someone that you meet's life in a negative way, right? And so, everything from taking somebody's liberty towards running towards gunfire when people are running away, to helping that family connect with a clinician that just had, their family member had just been sectioned for a mental health crisis. There literally every day presents something new. I like that part of law enforcement. I like that it's always changing. And that's something for me that's important. I think that the question that you ask about what is the best way to achieve satisfying work-life balance as a law enforcement officer. So work-life balance is the key to a successful law enforcement career. You do need mental and physical wellness to handle stresses of the work. There's no doubt about it. And when I started, we did not talk about wellness. We did not talk about our own mental health. We didn't talk about our physical health. And so I've appreciated the fact that in the last 5 or 10 years, there has been a focus on officer mental health and wellness. That's important to me because I think that this is a type of job, this is a type of profession. If you don't have positive things in your life to mitigate or at least help with the stressors, then you could go down paths that aren't positive. And so, you have to have that work-life balance. And it's not as simple as when I first started, all we did was work, and we would work and work and work, and all we knew was the job. That's easy to say. But I do appreciate the fact that my younger officers have given me an eye opener about work-life balance because they've got it right. I will just say that I had it wrong. They have it right. And so I promote that. You know what I mean? So what's a typical work day at this phase in my career? So I could start by prepping a budget meeting for the select board for them to take an officer away from me, which happened last week, to handling a training request for somebody that wants to learn a new skill to handling a civilian complaint or a civilian commendation for an officer's action, and then to meet with the organizers of the No Kings rally protests, which I'm going to be doing after this meeting, right? So this is my typical work day. Does not usually include much harm's way unless the paper is really sharp and I cut my fingers on it. I'm generally not out and about doing shift work. But I really do enjoy, kind of the difference that I can make in the role that I have. And that's important. The best parts of my current position is I had the ability to create a culture that when you're the chief, that's what you're doing. That brings the best out of the people that work for you, right? And work with you. It's not really for me, it's with me. And being able to provide opportunities and not just training, but a belief that the job means something, that you mean something, that people care about you, that everything you do can be, something that's impactful in other people's lives. I like doing that. That's part of my deal, in terms of that example of trying to set wherever we are and wherever we go as a department. When you are the chief, you generally have the ability to do that. I like that about my job. And in my role, you have to lead by example, right? So talk is cheap. I really, as much as you're hearing me talk, I'm not great with talkers. I think there's a lot of people that talk. I'm more comfortable talking to people that have an idea and are willing to do the hard work for it. I deal with people too much that talk and don't want to follow through. And so sometimes that's a little bit of a frustration for me. But that's where the chief's position has to push by that. And I do like being in it. And I literally have to meet with every group and every different facet of society that you can imagine. And I do appreciate that. And, I look at a couple of these other questions. What do I do what are my future ambitions? So my wife tells me I have to take the bar because I went to law school and I haven't taken it yet. And so to sacrifice that 4 year of time away from the family, so to speak, I'm supposed to pass the bar when I retire. And so at some point I see that happening. My time isn't finished in public work yet. I have a contract that I have a couple more years that I'll see and evaluate what I'm going to do then. But I really do wish that I had more time to focus on, kind of an area of advocacy. It might be juvenile justice, it might be mental health. Dr. Medchek, I actually became a board of director of Plummer Youth Promise many years after starting that program. And I did get off it last year, but I was on the board for almost 5 years. So I got to see the Plummer Home, which is now Plummer Youth Promise, really develop into an incredible facility. And so I'd like to be able to do some advocacy around a particular topic rather than jumping around like a chicken with my head cut off every day. What qualifications that you think someone in entering this field should have? So education really does matter. The willingness to put yourself above or put others above yourself, but education matters. And it doesn't mean that because you have a degree, it makes you a good police officer. That's not the case. It means that when you go to school, you are understanding the ability to digest and analyze things and issues and come up with solutions. And you do that fastly, quickly, with an open mind. And education really does matter as it relates to the field of policing. And it's not a field that is just blunt physical work. There is blunt physical work, but you're always using your mind and you train every day. We do so much training. I mean, hundreds of hours of training that you have to have the baseline of be able to retain and be able to use the skills that you have. So I think that those are important. Communication is important. You don't have to be the extrovert. You don't have to be the person that's always willing to talk, but you have to be the person that's willing to communicate and committed, persistent ethical, moral. These are all parts of if you are pursuing a career in law enforcement, you have to have them, right? And so I think that everybody, and I can see Julia on here. There's a couple students that I've had in my previous classes. I feel like I am always kind of advertising and pulling for people to get into policing, but the qualifications do matter. And then lastly, I'll just say, when we talk about the most important future changes in law enforcement and how to best prepare, obviously technology is likely the biggest change. It gives us opportunities to be able to solve crimes, predict crime with greater accuracy and all of these different types of things, prevent, deter, social media, share information. But as much as it does bring the positives, it doesn't make up for the human contact needed to be a good police officer, right? So everything that we talk about with AI and all of these analytics and different things, they're very important. But the human factor of conducting an investigation and dealing with people that are in need is never fixed by a robot. It's fixed by your communication skills. And so as much as we use technology to solve crimes, like in the case of DNA evidence, which is important. I think that technology is only part of what we're using as tools, and I think it's going to be interesting where we go. In some areas, I don't like it. I don't want a program to write a report for an officer. I want an officer to write a report. And I feel like we've been inundated with AI in the field of law enforcement recently, and I hope that there's at least some semblance of reasonableness. So that was a lot. And I appreciate everybody listening. And if you're not sleeping, I appreciate that as well.
Hmm.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And I'm certainly hopeful we'll come back to different aspects of this
Sure.
presentation, Chief King, in terms of questions and follow-up from the students. But I think for now, I would like to keep going with the presentations. And I noted that Matt Filongi, am I pronouncing your name correctly, Matt?
Yes, sir.
Yes. You're here from the MSP, the
Yes, sir.
Massachusetts.
Yes, my
Yes.
apologies. Coming from another meeting
Welcome.
prior to this, but yes.
No problem. Just if you have the ability to show your picture,
Yep.
please do. Or if it's
One.
a problem, then we'll, as I was saying before, it's more important to hear your voice, but ideally, that's a great combination of both. And just by a short introduction, that Matt is a liaison, serving mainly as a liaison officer. Maybe you'll talk more about that in terms of your presentation later in the class. He's been with the MSP for about 3 years or so. Is that
Yes,
correct?
sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And we want to thank you very much for joining us today. We're talking about the local departments first, and then we're going to move on to the MSP through your presentation and Nathan's following that.
Uh,
Okay. Um, but for now, I would like to move right along to Captain Sharp and his experiences, his vast experiences with the Lynn PD, but also significant experiences with graduate school. And this is something that's also a focus for this course. Graduate degrees in graduate school, and Captain Sharp did a PhD in criminal justice, which I think is relatively unusual for a police officer these days to go that far in terms of his education. And maybe, I didn't ask you to speak specifically about that, but it's something that I think is worthwhile for the students to hear about too. But first, if you could just introduce yourself further and talk about some of the questions that Captain King addressed, that would
Sure,
that would be great.
sure. I'll begin though by echoing apparently a theme at Salem where the professors try to dissuade you from law enforcement careers when you're going there. Um, Similar to Chief King, Jeb Booth told me I should be doing other things, encouraged me to pursue my PhD at Northeastern, which I subsequently did. Took a few years longer than I would have liked. When you go into a PhD program, they give you what they think are the best pieces of advice for completing in a timely fashion. And two of the things they recommended, don't don't collect your own data and don't do anything anybody hasn't done before in an analysis. I violated both of those rules. So it took me another 5 years to get my PhD. That's how the cookie crumbles, so to speak, right? Um, so my interest in law enforcement, I graduated from Lynn Tech. I went right into the military. Uh, I completed military service. I liked the whole aspect of service. That's what drew me to policing to begin with. So I got out of the military. I started attending college. First, just because of the timing, I ended up starting at North Shore Community College and then transferring into Salem, where I got my bachelor's degree. There was some lag because I was waiting for the master's program to be certified for Quinn compensation. The chief mentioned his bachelor's was paid for by the state. In Lynn, we have a tuition program. So my bachelor's and my master's program and my PhD were paid by the city of Lynn. So that was a real benefit to have. Some agencies you might find in law enforcement don't have that benefit, but if you're interested in law enforcement and you're looking at agencies, not to go out of sequence following the questions. The chief mentioned how it's an opportune time to get into policing right now, and I can attest to that. I've been heavily involved with the hiring efforts in Lynn. We've hired over 80 officers in the last 6 years. So we continue to lose officers. There's a free agent thing going on right now in policing. So it kind of goes to speak to how conditions in policing have changed since the time Dennis and I got on. Basically they gave you a gun and a badge and the benefits were the benefits and you didn't complain about it. And now there's a lot more of, well, can I do better somewhere else? And it's really driving a lot of change internally here in the state with local municipal police agencies who are re-examining what their benefit packages are because they're losing people. So Lynn is in one of those positions. We've done a lot of things recently to try to retain personnel, but we've traditionally had to hire only on civil service. And now there's a company called Get Badged, which Lynn Police have been using for the past couple of years. And it's been a game changer for both people who want to be in policing and then for agencies like ours. Civil service is just restricted to who takes that test, and it's on a structured basis. To Get Badged, they have that test frequently. And we're in agreement with civil service to do hiring off of that list. So we've had a lot of good success with hiring college graduates off the Get Badge list from a variety of areas, but surprisingly, um, more Lynn residents than we anticipated. So now I'll back up. I just wanted to join in on Dennis's comments there. So I've been with Lynn for 29 years. I did, as I indicated, military service. I'd also worked in manufacturing when I first came out. Manufacturing is not policing. Policing is demanding work. There's a lot of reward to it, but it requires a lot of dedication and perseverance. As I indicated, I had a desire to serve. That's kind of what motivated me to pursue a career in law enforcement. My motivations have not stayed the same necessarily. They've evolved as my positions have changed. Um, to take them out of order shows you how I am typically, right? Definitely in my position now, I like driving change. And I'm in a position as a captain of professional standards to be able to do that. Um, if you go into policing, you're going to find that the patrol job, you'll have that mastered in a few years. And if you want to have anything other than that, it requires ascending into different ranks. At different ranks, you will get placed in a role that requires you to do, as a sergeant, oversee people, maybe participate in community projects or things of that nature. And then as you rise up the ranks, your responsibilities align with those new positions. But in my current position, a couple of things that I've undertaken the last 6 years. The city of Lynn implemented a body worn camera program. I was selected to basically do that work. So that was a big part of driving organizational change within the agency by doing that project. It has paid dividends for us in terms of what we see on the street with how officers are interacting with people and how they're doing their jobs. Uh, Another thing I brought into the agency was a software package that monitors use of force and other critical incidents. So that allows the agency to use an early intervention system with officers. If we see a problem, we can review what's taken place, and if it needs follow-up, we'll follow up with the officers. One of the things I think I would mention is that Massachusetts being a post-regulated state now has changed a lot for policing. A lot of the things that we would see happen or it would be allowed to happen. And obviously, I'm speaking from experience working for a larger agency. Just basically won't work anymore. You can't employ officers that do certain things or can't possess a certain skills. So that's one of the things um, we have to, as law enforcement agencies in this state, we have to stay on top of as one of the trends that's changing. My stages of my career, started out as a patrolman. I did that for 5 years. I made sergeant. I was a sergeant on the street for 4 years, and then I got promoted to lieutenant. Unlike the chief, I got mired in mid-management at lieutenant rank. I had people not retire off a list, so I was going to get promoted. This is a sad song of policing. Um, but as a lieutenant, I did IA investigations. That's really when you talk about as you progress in your career, if you get into an internal affairs position, it completely changes how you look at your fellow officers. It really does. And it puts you in a position as more of an administrator as opposed to a line person. And the chief mentioned he's not a cop anymore. I call my office the Ivory Tower because I'm not really seeing any street activity there. But that position, I was in that for 3 years, and then I took over training. And I was in training for 12 years. And to echo what Chief King mentioned earlier, in policing, if you want to be in this business, you have to be dedicated to do training. And we do a lot of it in Lynn. This is where, like today, with merging technology, we're doing the Salem State Career Fair. I have our training unit bringing out our new VR system to demo with the students out there. So if you're around, you'll probably get a kick out of that. Um, but the training function to me is very critical for both the agency and then the officers. And I really enjoyed that work. I did it for a number of years. And one of the things I took pride in was, at the time, I was also in the PhD program, just trying to use what I read in research and then apply it in the agency in training areas to improve officer performance. That's really how I approached that job. And that's how my goal shifted. And then in my current position, I've been there for 6 years. Really, again, focused on areas where we can improve performance and then outcomes for both officers and community. The best parts of, like I said, I'm not a typical law enforcement officer. My best day is when I, get an opportunity to do something that's going to benefit. Right now we're working on obtaining a new CAD RMS system, that's computer aided dispatch software. Right now, we're in an obsolete system that really isn't working for us. And I'm working on some grant projects that will allow the agency to purchase that new software. So that's something I go to the office, I'm looking forward to working on. And the most difficult parts, I can tell you that in a big agency like mine, the worst parts are when we have IA investigations. You hate to see officers do things to themselves in their careers. These people have families, but unfortunately, if you Google Lynn, you will find there's all kinds of stuff on there about Lynn officers. Some of these investigations I oversaw or was directly involved in. Um, it's an unfortunate thing that ties in with wellness and why did you get on the job and making sure you have the right balance. We've had some really tough investigations that have resulted in terminations and resignations, and that's the worst part at my level right now. I come in, I hope not to see something land on the desk involving an officer. Um, my typical work day is like I think I've kind of touched upon it. I come in, I have a number of different areas that are I'm responsible for. Each one of these areas, I'm looking to drive change in evidence. We have new software. We're trying to improve the evidence practices that we have. They were horrendous before. We're just trying to get them up to speed with, I would mention one agency, Lawrence, that I happen to visit with, whose evidence procedures are excellent. We're trying to get towards where Lawrence is. VEU is our video evidence unit. They're pretty much established. They don't require a lot of direction from me, but we look to just implement and make changes. One of the big things we did recently under my direction was, um, with technology, the taser, the famous taser, right? It's gone through different phases. So the newest model, taser is leaps above where the older versions were, both in terms of being a de-escalation tool and then being as a less lethal force option. So we recently acquired those, and I developed a policy for that, and that policy is being adapted by other agencies in the state um, by virtue of the fact that it does emphasize um, the use of the tool in alignment with post standards, which require officers to de-escalate. And that tool we've done. So that's like typical work days. That's what I'm looking to do in different areas of the agency. Um, the best parts, like I said, are just areas where I'm working on making improvements. When I can help officers out, that's obviously rewarding for me in an administrative position. The people that work under me, one of the things about policing is leadership, the importance of leadership. If you choose this field, you're going to encounter different qualities of leaders. During my career, I've always tried to emulate the people that I thought did a good job, who treated me fairly, and then basically represented the agency properly. And that's how I've kind of carried myself working forward. My future work ambitions, I was hoping to retire in January next year, but I am next on the deputy chief list for Lynn, and we're also having a chief's test in June, so I'll probably take that. If I did become chief in Lynn, it'd be a position I would take because I have other areas I want to see him make improvements on behalf of the officers in the community. Lynn is not no place is perfect, and Lynn is pretty good, but there are areas right now where I see potential for change, positive change for both officers and the community. Um, Chief, are you still on a 4 and 2? You still on a four
No.
and two?
The officers are on 4 too, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, this is one of the big things with policing in our interviews with candidates, and then the loss of people that we've lost to other agencies. It's the schedule that's driving people out. 4 and 2 was the one Dennis and I have done for 30 years, right? Um, and you know, the new generation of people that want to become police, right? It's not the same thing. They don't want to work 80 hours a week. They want to work and then they want to have um, their downtime, which is one of these things that you would think is something amenable to executives in policing because that's basically going to facilitate that. So the new schedule people are looking at is a 4-10 schedule, and that's one of the things that I would like to drive in Lynn if I became chief or deputy. The qualifications I think someone needs to have entering the field. Effectively, number one is you want to have a service mentality, right? But number two, the biggest skill I tell people is communication, right? And it doesn't mean you have to be the greatest orator everywhere, right? Um, this job at its basis is not about using force. It's not about projecting your authority. It's about helping people. And you do that by talking to them, being able to do that, right? There is a definite component to being able to take charge. One of the issues we have with new recruits, younger officers, is we watch the body worn camera video and we say, yeah, some action was required by that officer to control that person, and it wasn't taken. So that's one of the things where we're kind of seeing in a different recruitment phase of who's joining policing today. What advice would I give? It aligns with Adjunct Professor King, right? Do your work in school, right? I taught at Merrimack. I did the graduate program there. I also taught at Northeastern undergrad. Um, if you go into the graduate program, especially, that is your one time in your life where people, A, care about what you say, because if you get into policing, they're probably not going to care as much. I don't know, do you dispute me, Chief King, right? Um, but really, you want to be able, like he said, take information, synthesize it, and then develop your own opinion, right? There's a lot of important issues we deal with in policing. Use of force, ethics. We have immigration issues right now, and we have protests in Lynn. These are all things we have to manage as a police agency. So, it's an exciting career. It's a challenging career. And, the two qualities you want to have, you want to serve and you want to be able to, you want to be a good communicator. And then you want to have a basis of knowledge. If you're coming out of school, know what the issues are. One of the reasons why I ended up gravitating towards getting my PhD was I had all these questions that required answers, and I was seeking them through further study, right? Because I worked in a urban environment. There's a lot of things going on, and I was during my studies at Salem State, we had huge gang problems in Lynn, massive gang problems, gang violence, shootings every night. Some of these things I wanted an academic view on how to interpret what I was encountering on the street, and that's one of the reasons why I was kind of driven to that. Um, yeah, changes affecting work. I mean, body worn cameras has changed a lot. And, I mentioned the taser, that's a technology that's being used. To give you an idea, just a full presentation is that the new taser has a 50-foot effective range, which is a long way that allows you to basically develop time and space to try to communicate and negotiate, right? It's the longest reaching tool that we have available to policing, and that's a big change in my opinion. The chief mentioned AI, and this, unfortunately, I have a daughter that's a junior at Emmanuel, and my son graduated last year. Um, don't use AI to do college work because it's going to hurt you. And the AI and policing that they're pushing on report writing, the chief and I 100% agree. You have to testify in court. How are you testifying to something that you didn't write with your own mind? It's one of those things that the technology companies are pushing out, but I think the realists and us are pushing back on it, saying that's not going to be appropriate for us. Um, and I think yeah, I mean, how do you prepare for those changes? I mean, you guys are already prepared. You know how to use technology. You're going to walk right into it. It's not going to be a big challenge to you. The biggest challenge for policing is, the salary is good. On the health and wellness, I forgot to mention, one of the things we go to trainings. They mention it all the time. Is come on the job, you make $100,000, so you get a car payment for $1,500 a month, and next thing you know, you have to work. And you want to try to avoid that as best as you can. And it's better that's said than done, right? But that's it. Sorry for taking up too much time.
No, the opposite. It's been really fascinating and thought provoking. you know. Okay. Shifting now to our other level of policing on the state level. Because we've had sort of in-depth presentations of experience, vast experiences, both of our speakers in the local departments, but now we want to take advantage of a viewpoint from the state. And I know I didn't put it in the questions, but if you could also address Nathan and Matt, how the state service differs from the local in your view. And I don't know if any of you had local experience before you became state troopers or if you went right into the state level. But we're certainly interested to get some kind of comparative analysis of what that might be like for students who are thinking of, policing at more than one level. Maybe they haven't made a decision about what level they actually want to go into so far. So let's see, between the two of, well, Nathan, do you want to maybe go first and then we'll follow up with Matt?
That's fine.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. All
All
right,
right.
great.
First of all, I just want to apologize. My camera's not working. Go figure, state police laptop. But at least you can hear me. So my name's Nathan Montero. I've been a state trooper for 12 years. Currently work in the recruitment office. I have about 26 years total law enforcement experience. When I graduated high school a long time ago, I got accepted to Westfield State University. I majored in criminal justice. When I self-reflected what I wanted to do in a career, I took in consideration I like to solve problems. I like to work outside. I wanted something that's challenging, rewarding, something different every day. I wanted something with good benefits, good pay, pension. I wanted something that aligns with my morals, values, and ethics. And law enforcement seemed like a great choice. My sophomore year in college, I didn't have a lot of money to pay for school. And I was just doing what I could. I joined the Army National Guard, and they paid for my tuition. I was in a out of a what is it called? Reconnaissance Unit, 1104 Light Infantry Division out of Westfield. So it was right down the street from my school. So I did weekend drills, also played sports at Westfield. My junior year, I had an internship with the Department of Youth Services. It was good. It was eye opening. Working with in that agency and dealing with juvenile different laws and stuff like with that, which led me my senior year. I worked for an organization called AmeriCorps, and I worked with juveniles in Springfield and Holyoke area. So there's the cities. There's a lot going on. And then when I graduated Westfield, my first job again was with the Department of Youth Services in Plymouth County Correction. I worked in the juvenile unit. So I had kids in prison looking at life in prison, going to Shirley. They were going to Walpole. And I did that for 2.5 years where I was a supervisor. And then I decided, I said, you know what? I'm already in prison. Why not make $15,000 to $20,000 more and become a correction officer? So I became a correction officer in the same prison for about a year. And then at some point in time, I started reflecting on if I wanted to stay in there or not. And it kind of set in where I'm doing time too. And I kind of was like, you know what? I think this is not for me. I wanted to do something different. So I became a New Bedford police officer. I was there for, 11 and a half years. New Bedford's it's a small city geographically, but it has a big population. We had over 100,000 reports every year. I was on the SWAT team, tactical team, and honor guard for 8.5 years. I think I've done everything on New Bedford. But I still wasn't fulfilled. And just going to the same calls, and it just wasn't for me. I felt like I needed more. So I got on a state police. And I've been on, like I said, 12 years. When I first graduated, I was assigned to the Bourne Barracks. And Bourne was a little slow in comparison to New Bedford. So I had, it was a good time to be proactive because on New Bedford I was reactive, so it was a little different for me. But my first year on the job, I was involved in a shooting, and I could talk about that a little later if you want to as well. And I was on the road for about 3.5 years, and then I put in for the recruitment unit. An opening came up, and I've been here ever since. I got in here. So for me now, my duties are I'm like advertising for the, the civil service exam. I advertise for the cadet program, internships, student trooper program. I teach at the academy. I mentor candidates throughout the process, which is a long, tedious process. It takes about anywhere from 6 months to a year. And I also do exit interviews at our academy. So yeah, some of the things when we're not kind of like advertising, some of the other things that we do, obviously Q&A sessions. I do all the career fairs. I do, tours. When it's all said and done, I do about 300 events a year. So I'm pretty busy. Um, and yeah, so let me go through some of these questions here. Let me see. All right. So, what are the best parts of a typical law enforcement officer's day, and what are the most difficult parts? So, for the average trooper on the job, we call it the rope trooper. We have there's 2,300 troopers. We have about 1,100 troopers that are on the road, and they're just basically answering calls for service. And yeah, the best part is just helping people. I'm sure a lot of us will have, that's what we do this job is to, we have passion for that. The most difficult parts is probably not knowing what's to come. We have statewide jurisdiction, so it's 351 cities and towns in Massachusetts, and a lot of what happens in the towns and the cities end up on the highway. So it's kind of your day can go from being quiet to, a lot going on in about a matter of minutes. We have cars going the wrong way, so it's dangerous on the highway, especially when you add in the factor of speed. So we have a lot of severe crashes, and it's probably the most difficult part. Let me see. What do you think is the best way to achieve a satisfying work-life balance as a law enforcement officer? Well, I think that's exactly what you have to do. You have to keep work at work and keep your family in life balance on the other side separate. What we do on the state police, it's good. It's in our contract. We get to work out at work. So every barracks has a gym. We have 37 barracks, and it allows us to decompress. If anybody's involved in traumatic incident, we have employee assistance unit, which helps out with that. So it's good to have someone you can talk to. They're kind of like therapists on the job. As far as like when I go home, obviously I'm a father, I'm a husband, and I just take my hat off. And I've never missed cheer competition, never missed football games, etc. So and it helps to have a spouse who's supportive as well. My wife been with me for 28 years. She's been through 3 law enforcement academies with me, and picking the right spouse matters. Let me see. What are the best parts of your current position, and what are the most difficult parts? So my current position, obviously recruiting, the best part is providing bridges for people to, wherever they are. A lot of them come from local, a lot of them military, a lot of them just want to change, have a career change. And it's just helping people get there. That's the most rewarding part for me. The most difficult part, things change over time as far as like we have to obviously we used to get in 15,000 people to take the test, and now we're down to like 5,000 people. So we have to pivot and come up with creative ways to recruit. And I think we've been doing a pretty good job of that. We're treading water like everyone else. We haven't had the need to really hire outside the state, but I think we're going to have to start doing that because times are changing. And it is what it is. So we just have to modify. What are your future work ambitions? For me, I think I've done a little bit of everything else. I want to do something totally different. I wouldn't mind getting my captain's license and go work at the Marine Unit or something like that. I think that'd be pretty cool. Some of my classmates, they're divers and they work in there, and I think it'd be fun. Something, like I said, totally different than being on the road or doing recruiting. What qualifications do you think that someone thinking of entering this field should have? I think always like obviously seek higher learning like everyone's doing now. College is great because it allows you to critically think. You have to be organized, multitask, is disciplined. I would also add to that is make sure you're physically fit because if you go through our process, it's academy is challenging and you need to be physically fit. What advice would you be able to give someone to maximize their success, the selection process, and on the job if hired? I would say do some volunteer work, be an EMT. Military is always great. For us, we give military veterans 2 points on our tests, so that's advantageous. All right, next question. What do you think will be the most important future changes affecting work in law enforcement field? Like the previous speakers, I think, technology is always changing. And also, I want to add that case law is always changing too. And sometimes it's not in our favor. We have to modify how we do things. Our policy and procedures are always changing, and rules and regulations. You just have to make sure you're doing the right thing when no one's watching. How can current and future law enforcement officers best prepare for these changes? Just have an open mind, and just it's a marathon. So you just got to pace yourself and don't take anything personal. Did I answer most of the questions? I think I did.
Yeah.
All right, I'll save some time for Matthew.
You guys hear me? Just want to make sure my mic's working.
Yes.
Awesome. A lot of what I have to say will piggybacks off of Nate, but you know, coming into the law enforcement career, I kind of had a different path. I grew up small town up in northeastern Mass. I went to high school, played football over there. Didn't really ever think about going into law enforcement, to be honest. Um, I kind of had a position where I wanted to do something. I knew I wanted to help people, but I didn't really know exactly what it was going to be. Assumed it was going to be in the medical, like a medical career or something along those lines. So I eventually went to Stonehill College after graduating high school. Played football at Stonehill, and while I was over there, I was taking health science classes, and luckily my roommate, one of my really good friends, he was a criminal justice major, and he heard me complain about how much I hated all the labs and 4-hour chemistry labs, 3-hour bio labs, and all the other stuff I was doing. And he was telling me, he's like, why don't you try, looking into law enforcement? With him having two parents who were in the criminal justice field, it was kind of natural for him. So, but for me, I didn't have no parents, no friends, or family members, whatnot, that were in criminal justice. So that was kind of my first glimpse into a different career path. So because of him, I started off with an intro to criminal justice class. And from there, I kind of fell in love with the idea of going into law enforcement. Uh, I had great professors at Stonehill who really set me up for success. And I'm really happy to say that while I was at Stonehill, they really prepared me to be able to go and have career fairs and whatnot, similar to what Salem State does. And at the first one I went to, I had the pleasure of meeting Trooper Nate Montero, who was there for representing the Mass State Police. And he sold me on the job from the moment I met him. So he really, from seeing him and the other trooper who were there, like in the uniform, and then just the discipline, and the clean cut nature of everything that had to do with what I knew the state police was and is. So I just always knew that I wanted to go be a state trooper, and I just held myself to that standard of knowing I wanted to get to that point at some point in my life. So while I was at Stonehill, I knew I'd have to take the test. Obviously, you got to take the civil service test. You got to do all those things. I took the civil service test while I was a sophomore, I believe, just to get a run at it, see how it went. At that point, state police wasn't on every single civil service test, so I took it. It was just as a local, like for the local level, and I didn't hear anything back. At that point, I think I scored like a 90. I still didn't hear anything for 2 years on that list, so I knew I was gonna have to take it again. By the time my junior year came, I was taking more. I didn't want to wait around just for civil service to come around again, so I took non-civil service tests. I similar to like Get Badged. I think there was another company that was running them. I took them for a bunch of different municipalities from close to where I was from, and I ended up getting in touch with somebody who was connected to somebody who worked up in Nashville PD. So I took the test for Nashville PD. I ended up graduating from Stonehill and then got luckily from the moment I took the test in Nashua, they kind of helped me along through the process, and I ended up getting hired right after graduating college. So I made sure I told them that from the moment I took the test, I was like, I want to make sure I graduate from school first and then get my opportunity to go into law enforcement. So they were great about that. I was able to, you know, slide right into the academy from graduating college, and it was a great department to work for. Honestly, Nashua. I'm not from New Hampshire, not from that area. Didn't know anything about Nashua, but it was such a great place to, similar to Lynn, very busy city. I mean, Nashua had 80 to 100,000 calls for service every year. I got all types of experience from, assaults to domestics to different sexual assault calls to bar fights to disturbances, disorderlies, car stops, stabbings, homicides, shootings, everything you could think of. I got a little, glimpse of all those calls for service while working in Nashua as a young kid coming right out of college, who was, honestly lucky to be able to grow up in a suburban environment. Really, never really had to worry about much with my parents taking care of me and whatnot. I got an idea of what uh, growing up in a city could be like and what really goes on uh, outside of the community I grew up in. So Nashua was a great experience for me, honestly. Um, but with that being said, I knew I wanted to come back home. I wanted to still work for Mass State Police. And I knew that I was going to have to, like I said earlier, take the test. So I took the civil service test again while I was in Nashua. I ended up scoring well. I got an opportunity to go into the 88th RTT with Mass State Police, which was in 2023, and went through ended up going through that process. The academy was difficult, and I'd be lying if I, said it wasn't. It's difficult for everybody, difficult for different reasons. You might be going in with kids, and you have to worry about like your significant others, at home taking care of the kids by themselves for a full week while you're away because state police academy you're living there Monday to Friday. You don't touch your phone until you leave your phone in your car on Monday. You don't touch it again until Friday when you're leaving. So you have no contact to your family, to your friends, to your kids if you have them. Um, so it's tough. Mentally, it can be tough. Physically, it's brutal. You got to go in ready to go mentally and physically. Um, don't expect to get in shape at the academy. Show up in shape for the academy. But this is all stuff I kind of knew going in. I was lucky to have great resources, so I was prepared mentally, physically to go. Um, but still, the academy was tough. And then after you get through your 6 months, though, it's worth it because the opportunities are endless here. Um, as Troop Montero stated already, I mean this job has every single unit or specialty you could think of that you'd want to get into for a law enforcement profession. Whether you want to be a K-9 handler, you want to be on the stop team, you want to fly helicopters, you want to drive boats on the Marine unit, dive unit, horses. We got the mounted unit. Um, all the forensic labs, every single investigative unit you could think about, from cybercrime to homicide detectives, everything you could think of in law enforcement, we have on state police. So that's kind of what drew me to state police. Um, but I'm not gonna I never forget the experiences I had at the local level that really made me into the trooper I am today, but gave me some significant experience, with different calls for service that you might not see on the highway necessarily that you're going to get in the cities. So I would never go back and turn in my time that I spent at Nashua because that really helped, kind of mold me into who I am today. And so that's kind of my thing on that. I right now, so I right after graduating from the academy for state police, I got assigned to the Andover barracks, and I worked there for about 2 years. Working the Andover barracks, after once you graduate from the academy, you go 3 months of break-in, we call it, which is your FTO phase, of getting, training, hands-on training, one-on-one with different road troopers that'll teach you, the ins and outs of what you got to do every day. And after I got through that phase, I was assigned to I believe, the mid shift, and then I stayed from there on out. I, loved working the mid shift, and it was, it's not for everyone, definitely, but I loved working it. I had a great group of guys I was working with on that shift, and we went out, we had each other's backs, we worked hard, and we did what we had to do. And uh, you get weird calls in the middle of the night, that's for sure. So that keeps it interesting, obviously. But uh, working in the mid shift after that, I got the luckily got an opportunity to apply for the position I'm in now, which oh, let me backtrack. So when I was working the mid shift, my last couple months of being on the mid shift, I got the chance to FTO, which honestly I really appreciated that experience too, because I think field training, FTOs, field training officers, they're really like the backbone of every police department, because at the end of the day, like they're training the new people coming in. So if you don't have good people uh training, the new people coming in, then really you're not going to have a successful department moving forward. So I took pride in the opportunity of being selected to go train the new guys and girls coming in, and I had a lot of fun doing it. It was a great time, and then after that, I got the opportunity to apply uh, for the position I'm in now, which I'm the community action team liaison. And essentially, my role is for state police. We don't have uh, school resource officers. So my role is to essentially try to implement community relations and uh, build and maintain community, uh, not only relations, but events in different municipalities and cities and towns throughout the state, uh, to be able to guide people and have them know that what state police is all about, opportunities we have, not only from a recruitment standpoint, but that being there to support the community and whatever anyone needs, and just fostering new relationships and just making sure that uh, people know we're here to help at the end of the day, just like any other police department. But we typically, being on the highway, we don't have the same interactions that local police departments have in their cities and towns. So my role, essentially, a lot of times people will see state troopers on the highway or at the airport, but my role is to fill in that gap in between and implement new programs. Like I've had numerous basketball leagues that I've run. So for state police, we partner with Police Activities League, PAL, and they help us run our Unity basketball leagues, for example, which I have a league that I run in Lawrence, Lynn, Stoneham, and Woburn, just four that I've started up myself. Woburn I was handed, but the rest I implemented myself, and I took pride in that. Uh, on top of those, just doing other events like I had a car seat clinic that I've helped run in Lynn. I've had water safety events in Lawrence. It's doing events like these to help the community out, whatever we can do to utilize our resources as the state police to be able to give back to the cities and towns that we're patrolling in. Um, that's kind of what my role is now. So a lot different than just being on the road normally, but I also get to help out and do road tasks as well, whether it's helping barracks out with crashes, helping out with calls for service. My unit also gets to help out with all the specialty units, for whether it's apprehending somebody with a warrant, going helping out the drug units with directed stops, going out and helping out the executive protection unit with extra security for the governor, lieutenant governor. So all types of vastly different tasks, but keeps my days are all different. Every day is different, really. So that's what I like about it, and I get a taste of everything in this role.
Matt, can you speak maybe a little bit more about your future ambitions and qualifications of people looking to get into this field, specifically for the state police, and then the significant changes you think are going to occur in the field in the future?
Yeah, so for my ambitions, I mean, I like to I like to get a good amount of experience in different areas. Personally, um, I personally don't see myself in this position forever, but I do appreciate the opportunities I have in it now. Um, I'd love to get into some sort of investigative role down the line. I know that's kind of where I'm trying to head towards. That's my own personal ambition, but for the job in general, I think it was already explained earlier, but a lot of everything going forward is very um, there's a lot of technology going into the job, which is much more than it was 10, 20 years ago. So I think the future of the job requires people who are able to really utilize and implement all the technology advances we have, be able to innovate new things and just put them into work. And but I think the main factors that you have to think about when you want to go into this field, whether it's being a state trooper, being a police officer for any town or city, is not only wanting to uh, help people, which is the main thing, but just knowing that you know being ready to know that you're gonna have to. It's gonna be difficult. There's gonna be difficulties, and knowing that you have a good support system behind you that can help you get through those difficulties, knowing that you have the mental toughness also to be able to know that you're gonna work through and persevere through difficulties. Um, there's all types of things that you're gonna see, unfortunately, in the job, and just being mentally prepared that that you could come across some really terrible things, and that just you're gonna be okay at the end of the day, and being able to, like Nate said earlier, separate work from your personal life. Unfortunately, I've seen plenty of cases, unfortunately, of people who struggle to do that, and it's easy to say it early on, but as time compounds, uh, there's a saying about having a backpack, and then you keep throwing rocks into that backpack till it's too heavy, and then it takes you down at some point. At the end of the day, you want to make sure you're taking care of yourselves prior to that point, of just being completely brought down to the ground. So I think just having a good mentality on knowing that you're there to help people at the end of the day, but knowing you're also there, you need to take care of your family too, and be there for yourself and your family, um, and not let the job take you down, and the stressors and the issues out in the community. Let those things take you down. Know that you're ready to go, mentally and physically. Uh, Having a good attitude, and just you know being ready to go. Those are the main factors, I would say. It's important to just hone in on those. Just listen to people who have experience and who are willing to give you kind of insight onto what they've experienced and what they know. And that's honestly the best advice you can get, is just listening to those who've done it before you and learn from their mistakes, and try to not make the same mistakes, and try to move forward in a productive way.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. It was very insightful. All the presentations were really very insightful, I thought, based on a world of experience that all of you have. And even though Matt, you're sort of the youngest on the totem pole, but it seems like you've had enormous amounts of experiences in the years, both before and since joining the MSP. So I think what we often do in this class is take a break sort of in the middle, but I think, excuse me, we're on such a roll today that I think it would be good to just follow through with the questions, and maybe we'll end a little earlier than we usually do. But I want to first ask if you look over your notes, anything you wrote down in your notes, excuse me, the students in the class. And I think whatever questions we ask, I think it would be interesting to hear from all the panelists in response, and then we can compare. We can see if a certain perspective from one department to another differs, or if a certain perspective from one level of policing differs to another perspective. So, all right. So, was there anything that any of the speakers said that particularly struck you about policing? I'm talking to the students now, that you would like them to either elaborate a little bit more on, and you don't have to ask a specific presenter, but we can really ask it for all the presenters. What what ideas did you come away from so far in this session about law enforcement? Is it making you think more about it as a career, or are you thinking about it perhaps in a different way from when we started the session today? Um, what thoughts? I'm going to sort of turn this open to all the students now, and hope there'll be, you know, some participation from each of you at some point. Uh, who would like to start? Maybe Danny, if you don't mind getting us going here, because you have the military experience also that you can sort of put in as a backdrop. Maybe if you can tell us a little bit about yourself, and then was there anything that the guest speaker said that struck you, that you hadn't thought of in the same way before as you did before this class today?
Yeah, one of the speakers mentioned about dive teams. I was actually interested in dive teams because well, I'm taking geophysics right now, and I thought like something like side scan sonar and all that stuff sounds interesting to me. So I was wondering if you have to be a law enforcement officer to be in a dive team, or if you could be a civilian.
Can you just say something a little bit about yourself, your own experience before?
Oh, sure. So I finished high school in 2019 in Malden High. Right after high school, around September of 2019, I enlisted into the Marine Corps. I served about 3 years, but I had a bunch of different experiences. One main thing I got to do was I became a brig escort. So the brig is basically like a federal like military prison. So I escorted a few people from my unit that committed crimes, and at this
Uh,
from the prison to the ends. So did I just lose connection? Hello.
A little bit, yeah.
It broke up a little. It broke up a little bit, but yeah, what were you saying about the brig, the work with the brig?
So I got to escort some prisoners. So they're service members who committed some like specific crimes. Um, one person went one person deserted. So basically, that is about like 30 days of unauthorized leave. So, or sorry, unauthorized absence. And they were caught at an airport. So we brought them back to base, and I had to take that person with two escorts to the military court, and then I took him to the brig. And then I had another case where we had to take a person who did sexual crimes against children, and I had to bring him to the court and to the brig also.
Hmm. So that's pretty heavy responsibility, actually,
Yeah.
in terms of that. All right, but could you just restate your initial question, and we'll ask the panelists.
So I was wondering if any of the agencies, do you have to be a law enforcement officer to be in a dive team, or can you just be a civilian?
So you have to be associated with a law enforcement likely. I was on the Salem Police Dive Team for about 10 years, and it is a lot of fun. It's not public safety diving is not regular diving. It's not like going to the Bahamas. You can never see underwater. You're looking for bodies. In our cases, drugs. We would check the ships that came into the harbor. But it was a great experience. The Mass State Police also has a pretty significant full-time dive team. But on the local level, you wouldn't be taking civilians for the team itself. But we did have two Peabody officers that were part of the Salem Police dive team.
All right, thank you.
Yeah,
But they were
Scott.
still police. They were still police officers, though.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, so it's literally, it's the same type of job, it's just underwater. And so when you are lifting a car that comes out that's been stolen and has a body in the back, you are capturing the evidence the same way, chain of command. You have to have the ability to do all of those. You need to have basically underwater crime scene investigation skills. And so it's a police function. We'll just say that. Which is different than like the fire departments, right? So local fire departments often have search and rescue teams. It was a little bit different.
I mean,
So,
I would, it's not diving, obviously, but if you're not interested necessarily in being a police officer, but going in as a civilian supporting police, in our case, in Lynn, we have two full-time civilian crime analysts that work for us. So, that's something that kind of I put on the agency uh, capabilities, so to speak, in the last few years. Another grant that we were able to locate that funded those two positions for us.
Are those ongoing positions, or are they
Yep. Yeah,
remote?
they have two full-time. It's the same people, obviously, but two full-time analysts that work in our CID.
But they have to get grants renewed in order to stay?
Yeah. Well, one of the positions the city has picked up. The other one is a grant that we get every year. Basically, I was able to identify how we could use those monies we were using for something else to apply to that position. So both of them are rather secure for the funding.
And can you talk about the background a little bit of those two people? Their educational background, the qualifications for that type of work?
Yeah, the main crime analyst we first hired, her name is Rachel Deslitz. She came from Lowell. Her father was actually a captain with Lowell PD. So she was our first hire. So she came over with a number of years of experience doing crime analysts for Lowell PD. The other gentleman, I don't know his background that much. He's a younger person, graduated from college, had done some internships, I believe, with the state for doing crime analysts, and we hired him. So he's a relatively young person.
As far as the state police goes, we have, I think, maybe 7 full-time divers, and we have about 15 part-time divers. It's like having a job within the job. So any of those specialty units that we have, like diving, if there's an opening, you put in for it. And I think they just had, I think, 2 openings, and there's like 20 something people that applied for it. So it's a cool job if that's what you like. The beauty of the state police, you got to find your passion on the job, and it's something for everybody. But yeah, good question, Danny, and thank you for your service.
All right, thank you.
Once you find your passion for the job, are you able to keep it for extended periods of time, or you end up getting shifted to other things?
Once you get permanent, you're able to stay there until they remove you. It's usually
Yeah.
disciplinary reasons, or if you have your fire burns out, you kind of get burnt out, and you want to do something else. So then you can change. But like I said, we have over 100 different jobs, so you definitely find something here in the state police.
Yeah. Okay. The students, please jump in, whenever you have more questions or reactions, but I'm going to ask a few in the remaining time that we have today, which we have we we have a while, but I did promise to end a little early before before 3:50, that's for sure. But I think a number of very important themes came up in these presentations, and I wanted to ask our panelists if they could address this um, further. And that's it for like students such as yourselves in this class. You really haven't really begun your career yet, but in the next year or two, you likely will be taking that step. And I'm wondering if the panelists can address how important it is when you first come onto the job to have a mentor. How important is mentoring in the law enforcement field? Is it very important, medium, or not really that vital?
You should.
That's fine. Sorry.
I beat you by a half a second.
It's all good, Chip.
You should have a mentor before you start your career, right? So, I probably talked to 5 different people that are somehow come into my path on any given year. And, you kind of just outline what all of these options that we're all talking about look like. And if you're a CJ major, right, you're wondering if I want law enforcement, do I want federal, do I want state, do I want local? And having a conversation with somebody about the options with them and the realistic hiring opportunities is important, right? So you do need somebody to help guide you through the path. I think it is important. And then when you get on the job, you'll naturally kind of find people that you want to replicate, and then they should become your mentor. And that is, something that is really, really important because wisdom and experience is often gonna rule over, a quick decision and the like. But they're there, and when I say that you're mentoring, if I'm talking to somebody, you're giving them the realistic, as much as you can. So a federal job is much different in law enforcement. In 2026, it's different than it was a year ago. It's a different position, and go at it. If you have a particular DEA, FBI, whatever it is, there are options, but they're generally limited, right? There are a lot of people competing for them. Local and state, yeah, this is a good time to be a police officer in Massachusetts. And I'll just be brutally honest, there's a lot of scenarios that when you give people what it might look like in a community or in a department, you should know, right? So when I compete against people with Lynn, you either want to be a cop in Lynn or you want to be a cop in Marblehead. We're not the same. And the type of work is not the same. Just like the type of work, as a trooper, as a road trooper is not the same, generally speaking, as a local police officer. And so, be realistic. Give them an opportunity. We had a young man that had Lynn ties and Marblehead ties. He happened to grow up in Marblehead, and he chose Marblehead. He's doing a really good job. But during the interview, the question was, where do you want to work? Right? I mean, at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to when we are being realistic. And if you're not realistic, or if you're not honest, then you're doing a disservice to the young person that you're talking to.
Can you elaborate a little bit? I want to get back to the subject of mentoring from the other panelists, but can you elaborate a little bit? I don't know if enough people think enough about this. They think they want to be on the local level, but they don't think about the differences between the local departments. So can you and or Captain Sharp elaborate on the differences between working in Lynn and working in Marblehead?
Yeah, I'll be really quick because I've done both, the city and now the town, right? And so they're just different. A city has inherent criminal things that towns like Marblehead don't have, or Swampscott, right? And so you are busier as it relates to crime. That's just the numbers suggested. I stopped trying to apply Salem solutions to Marblehead problems years ago. And so there is somebody, if you are interested in hot calls and drug interdiction and different things like that, you might want to have a little knowledge about that city and that department before you decide to take that job. If you are interested in being a police officer in the community you grew up in, or that you see yourself growing up in, and you want a different pace to start, then you look at those. I'm going to tell this to everybody that's listening on this board. You need to prepare if you're going to go in an oral interview for the job. You need to know what the city of Lynn represents, how many numbers, what are the numbers of officers, what are the units. You need to know what it represents in Marblehead, have an idea if you were to go in for a trooper job, because you're supposed to prepare. But I am often not impressed with people that don't understand the differences between where they're going to work.
Eric, I was
Captain Sharp,
gonna,
you have
yeah, I
anything
was
to
just
add to
gonna
that?
add, it's not necessarily mentorship, but for the candidates themselves, to reemphasize, it is very important to understand where you want to work. What type of policing do you want to be involved in? Some people are not cut out to work in Lynn and or a Lawrence or a Boston, right? That's more frequent calls. Like the chief said, you're going to handle a lot of criminal calls. You're going to have to testify at court a lot, right? These are all things that, maybe if you choose a Marblehead or a Swampscott, you won't be doing that. In our experience already with the Get Badged conduit, that allows candidates to take a test and then they can apply to all these agencies that are members of the Get Badged group, I would call them. And we've already had a number of cases where we've had candidates, we've asked during the oral board interview exactly what the chief said. Where do you want to work? Is this something for you? And you have to be honest with us and with yourself if that's what if a town is what you want, or a city, or a state police, or what have you, right? On the mentorship, I would just add most agencies have field training officer programs. Matt mentioned his, Lynn has one, and basically that's part of the whole mentorship when you come onto the job. We try to have qualified officers selected as FTOs that basically do the job well, but then have some experience and have the personality that basically will coach you as opposed to criticize you. And that's, part of the thing when you come on, you'll identify people who you like how they approach people and talk to people and all that. And that's, how you start your career and how you become successful.
And how actually, one thing relating to this this mentoring idea is that, in terms of them guiding you in terms of your career progression through the agency or through whatever agencies you may end up working for, how do you avoid being too good at some kind of early task you get so that you don't, they tend to sort of pigeonhole you. It's almost like you could compare it to an acting career. You only get certain role suggestions because you're so good at the type of role you're in, and you don't get to branch out and portray other types of characters. Is there an analogy in law enforcement that any of you can address? And how can a mentor help you possibly not fall into that trap?
Hmm. That's a tough one, I think. I don't think policing equates to maybe professional organizations at that level. I think there's a lot of expectation on the individual officer in terms of autonomy to drive their career through the choices they make. We have people that are in positions, they've been there for a long time and they're happy with that. And then we have others that basically they look to move, and it depends. Once again, if you're someone who wants to do 7 or 8 different things in your career, then the state police is probably a good idea for you to try because, they have a lot of opportunity to do different things. An agency like Lynn has some opportunity, but not a tremendous amount. Boston probably more, but if you go into the Marblehead, I can't speak to the chief directly, but I think, the special positions are there, but they're not as frequent or as well staffed, so the opportunity is less.
So there are differences across agencies in terms of what type of opportunities, for shifting especially,
Yeah,
may
for
be available.
specialty units and functions and
Hmm.
movement and all that.
On
And
on state police, oh,
yeah, I'm sorry, Nate, yes?
On state police, recently the job has offered for a handful of people in certain areas. If you want to try something different, so if you work at a casino, you want to try the dive team, you're able to go for one cycle to try it, which is like 59 days to see if you like it. And then, so anybody has an opportunity to try something totally different, just so they don't get stuck in that pigeonhole and they want to see what else, explore what else is on the job. Most people, I can't say. I mean, there are quite a few people that stay in certain specialty units because they really have a passion for it for a long time. But most people tend to move around and do different things. And then once you make rank, sergeant, lieutenant, captain, all the way up, your role changes again. Because then you may go back to the road, or the job may put you in charge of something else within the job. So everybody has an opportunity to do different things if you want to. As far as mentoring goes, the chief and captain hit the nail on the head. You gotta explore, and every job has field training officers or some type of other training that you can take part in with recruiting for the state police. Once you reach out to us, whether it's mass.gov, whether it's text message app that we have, or third party, we tend to start grooming them. So what I do, I do meet and greets, I do tours, I invite them to, if we're going to have the helicopter land at GHQ, or I'll have them come see that, or I'll bring groups of people to a marine unit to take them on the boat rides. So I start grooming them that way. And then I invite their family members, their kids, for a barracks tour, give their kids some trinkets. So we kind of mentor them that way all the way up until they get into our academy. And even in our academy, every weekend, because they go Monday through Friday, on the weekends, we check in. We have a text message app, and we'll say there's 150 people in there. I'll text them all at the same time, stay motivated, start stretching. If anybody has any questions, reach out to the recruitment office. We'll guide, support you, and direct you in the right direction. So we consistently, from day one, contact with state police, all the way through up until field training, we mentor. And that's how state police is able to keep people once they come here. But as far as like figuring out what you want to do, yeah, they are both correct as far as really take advantage what the school has to offer, like stuff like this. Make sure you go to career fairs. There's tons of employers out there. You can reach out to your academic advisors. Everybody has experiences. The professor has experiences, and really ask a lot of questions, and try your best to figure out what you want to do. Only you know you the best. And once you figure out your passion, you match that up, and you land on the career that you really want to pursue. Then work doesn't become work, and that's just usually how it is. But you got to put the effort in. You're only going to get back what you put in.
We've also stressed the importance of using the resources of career services at Salem State, because a lot of these counselors have a lot of experience with different databases and different ways to sort of explore with you what your interests and talents are. And, that can help, I think, a
Yep.
lot. We find for a student who's a little bit lacking in direction.
And Dr. Metchek, you never get pigeonholed for being really good at your job in my experience, right? So you may be labeled because you do your job really well, that you're interested in not doing something, or there may be some internal stuff that you have to address. But the community policing stuff, that community impact unit, when I switched gears and started doing that, so I went from working the busiest part of the city to the community impact unit. And when my time to move happened, I became the court prosecutor. I put in for a position I thought that I would like and be able to do a decent job at, and I did it. And so whatever you're getting into, whatever it is, you have to do. Working hard and harder than everyone is always going to be a benefit. And you are, in retrospect, after 30 years of doing this, you're better suited for advancement when you have multiple experiences. And that's just the way it is, right? You know how to write a grant. Who knows how to write a grant? Well, somebody that's done it before. And if you're up for a promotion, that grants are now a big part of that job. When you're doing an interview or you're doing something, you're going to be able to explain what that means and how you can do it. You're good at, crime analysis. And why do you know that? Because I took this class and I was trying to do this as I was part of a union. And it all comes in together. And you make those choices. A lot of people make those choices. There are a lot of people that say, I like being a patrolman. And that's how I see myself. And then eventually maybe I'll take an exam. But they're content with where they are. But doing really well, in my experience, is not gonna kind of, give you that particular spot. And I mean that particular negative, in terms of doing
Mhm.
it. And I'm
Sure.
sure it's the same in the state police and the Lynn police. A small percentage of officers oftentimes account for the most work. And that is the nature of the job. Be one of those officers. Like if you're making
Mhm.
the decision to do it, be one of those officers.
It's come up a number of times, the reference to the programs like Get Badged. Is the is the exam for it different from the civil service exam, or what similarities or differences are there?
Yeah,
Um,
so Get Badge uses a standardized test, so it's similar to civil service, and it was actually a test that was used by the Mass State Police up until a few years ago. But it's still a valid instrument in across the country. So we've had two sessions in Lynn. They've, asked to come in. We have a 60-person lecture hall, so they came in and did testing. The last one we did was a few weeks ago. We actually had to use a second room as an overflow. But so Get Badge is different from civil service, both in the test they administer, but then if you go on their website, and this might be something that the Career Center has as a reference, is that you have the civil service process, which is it used to be only annually, now it's biannually. They're testing at civil service. And Get Badged is a private company. They have a website. They have two tracks. They have agencies that sign on to be clients, and then they have candidates who want to sign and take a test. And basically, there's a process in civil service that allows a city or town to participate in a hybrid hiring process, is what they call it, hybrid form. And that hybrid form allows us to hire 50% of the positions from the Get Badged list. So that's non-civil service. But when you get hired, you become civil service. So I think
mhm.
today, as it stands, we have seven graduating from an academy next week that were hired from Get Badged, and we have another six that we've hired from Get Badged. So total of 13 people that we were able to, and positions we were able to fill through that.
Okay, thank you. That's clarifying in that area. Another thing that came up a few times is this idea of a work-life balance in a law enforcement career. And one thing that I wanted to pursue further with the panelists, certain companies, for example, I believe it was Google that I read this about, that they were trying to be very liberal about when either a male or a female employee had a child, they had very liberal leave policies. In fact, at one point they were saying take as long as you think you want or need. But it turned out that employees at places like Google were not taking very long at all because they saw it as almost a stigmatizing kind of thing. Like if they took, what was viewed by their fellow employees as an unusual amount of time, it means they would be considered to be less productive, less dedicated to less dedicated to the job, to the profession, to the organization. So it was sort of ironic. They were being offered a very liberal policy, but very few took advantage of it. And I'm wondering with this idea of a work-life balance, like one or two of you mentioned, going to a gym, um, mental health counseling resources, which may be seen as stigmatizing, I think, especially in a law enforcement environment. I don't know if that's still true today, but that doesn't directly get at, the balance of when you're home or when you're on the job and how you're relating to your family. And I wondered if some of you you were indicating that the younger generation of officers is more attuned to this. than used to be in the past, but how do you actually put it into practice, a work-life balance? It sounds very nice to say and to talk about, but how do you actually put it into effect?
Yeah, I think it's honestly dependent on each person. I think everybody's different. Personally, for me, uh, going to the gym and working out is really important to me to clear my mind and make sure I'm good to go every day. Um, and then also having, a solid group of people or a couple people or one person, it doesn't really matter, but um, that you can always go to talk about if you had something, that you want to, get off your chest, or if there's ever, any issues that you might be going through or tough day, whatever it is, knowing you have that support circle to talk to, I think. But everybody's different. So there might be other people who don't care to work out, but they love to, if they're big into art and they want to, that's what clears their mind, or music or whatnot, or, anything that really works for you to really make sure that you're good to go next time you go to work, I think is the main thing. But you also want to just make sure that you're not taking work home with you, because obviously what you're doing at work um, might not be, you might be dealing with some tough things at work, but your kids and your family, your spouse, whatnot, they don't they deserve to still get your best. Just because you might have had a tough day at work, you know, you obviously got to keep in mind that, you owe it to them to be present with them, and to be, you know, a good person at home. And I know in this career, oftentimes it's tough to think about, and mental health has been more of a more recent thing that gets brought up a lot more. Before, uh, back in the day, I can assume, like I've heard, and that it just, you don't really talk too much about it, and it kind of is what it is. You kind of just get over it. But now with newer generations and the way everything is going now, I think it's more open to talk about how you're feeling, and how things are going, and uh, pretty much just making sure that you're good to go. And like Nate mentioned earlier, on state police we have the EAU, which they're there to pretty much, they're a unit that's assigned to literally monitor troopers and who might be going through tough times, whether it's loss of a family member, or whether it's dealing with some other, on the job stressors, a significant event that might have happened, anything like that. They'll proactively reach out to troopers to make sure that, if they need any resources, any further resources, anyone to talk to, they have it. And that's what, at least from our perspective on state police, that's been something that's been very pushed forward as of late, and they do a great job. And I'm sure other police departments are doing similar things. I know in Nashville there was something similar. So there's a lot of police departments are pushing more towards, making sure they're taking care of their own, which is obviously important. So I think, I don't know if that answers your question, Professor, but
Can they keep confidentiality for those who take advantage of these services but don't want it necessarily known to all of their colleagues that they went to that unit?
yes, exactly. From the MSP perspective, yeah, the EAU unit, everything that goes through them is, everything stays confidential, and they obviously don't go, talking to people about what other people's situations are. Obviously, if it's something that comes down to being like a life-threatening thing, then you got to do what you got to do. But everything stays, they keep it to themselves. Obviously, try to help you whatever ways they can.
Mhm.
Yeah, if you had a system that didn't allow for confidentiality, the system would be failed. And so it has created a lot more recognition. Stigma still exists, but it is definitely not the same type of stigma that existed, a few decades ago. And the wellness around leave time and all of that type of stuff. The state law is what we follow, right? So FMLA, I mean, not to get into the weeds, but you're allowed time off when you have a child, whether as long as you're a parent, right? There are lots of reasons that state law has clarified whether or not police departments want to recognize what you're allowed for, right? So all three of mine, I was off 2 rotations each. That's 8 days, and then I went back to work. That's not the case anymore because state law has better defined what both men and women can have when they have a child, or if they're taking care of a family member. The FMLA law has been defined really well, and so it is a different one. Dr. Metrick, we will never get to the point that we're Google because we have to run 24/7, 365, right? Um,
Right.
but it is one thing now that is definitely everybody's aware of. And I've my son's fiance works in a Google type atmosphere as a scientist, and she explained to me that kind of self-shaming of employee over another employee. Like they can take as much as they want, but they really don't because they don't want to be looked as a slacker.
Right. That's what I had heard. Um, all right. Another topic that came up a lot in the presentations was AI, and generally there was a discouraging of use of this type of technology for writing reports, right? Police reports. But I'm wondering if any of the panelists can speak to what do you see as a positive role? It's certainly something that's been debated in college and universities a lot lately since it came on the scene. What might be a positive function for AI in law enforcement as opposed to
So,
something you would discourage?
so I will tell you that Axon, who does the body worn camera and taser, they're heavily involved in a number of platforms, and their crime mapping software uses AI, and it's quite impressive. I went to a presentation where they gave a case study from Minneapolis. So to give you what the technology is in general, um, Axon has a platform. It's called Fusus. That Fusus platform can take all these camera feeds that everybody has on their buildings and pipe them into the system. And they had a armed robbery suspect, a plate number, and they used AI, and AI predicted the route the car was likely to travel from the bank robbery, and they located the vehicle on each camera as it went along after the fact. So that's how they use AI within this one technology platform to help policing solve crime, through predictive modeling. Um, in existing camera feeds. So that was quite illuminating, that presentation in that application.
So yeah, all right. So this is a different kind of thing than taking over a writing function for an officer. Completely different type of application, but
Right,
potentially
because
very
yeah,
valuable.
because I think the chief would agree. You want officers writing reports, and the reason why AI is being pushed, I think, in the field right now is because you're hiring some officers with uh, less capability to write their own reports. So this is a solution to that, as opposed to, say, you know, um, some sort of classes to help officers write reports or what have you. We'll just use AI. But in the police report business, I mean, ultimately, if your report led to somebody being criminally charged, either summoned or arrested, you will have to go to court at some point, and you risk having to testify. And I would never be comfortable testifying to something a report wrote on my behalf, and I spent absolutely no time thinking about it. Because oftentimes these cases are heard years later, and you're looking at a report that you didn't even write. So that's one of the issues. I don't know if the chief agrees.
Yeah, I would also say that that is something that is concerning to me because that's a road that we would go on. I'm not a fan of them writing it, but I'll give you a positive use of AI. There's a company called Blue Voice that we just contracted with that provides a closed system, reference guides, and AI. So meaning they're only using the law books that have been vetted. No, it's not like open AI where you could get the Well, I would give you an example. Just Google, can I carry a gun in a school in Massachusetts? And no, actually don't Google that. But if you did, you would get several different answers. And you can't unless you're a law enforcement officer. But here's the thing, right? There is a product out there that we just contracted with that's outstanding. It basically has put all of the law books that we've been relying for decades into one system that picks only from the books and only from the material that's within it, and it only shares within a closed system. That is a good use of AI. It helps in the field and on the street. Really difficult law questions and legal questions that you might have, bylaw creativity, city ordinance creativity, like how do I handle a situation? But to Bill's point, in terms of writing reports, I don't know if that's where we're going. That's not something that I'm strongly that I'm in support of either.
I mean, I guess I could add a just an experience we had at Manchester, New Hampshire PD. They were using, and I don't know if they still are. They were using AI report writing up there as a demo agency for Axon. And one of the issues that I asked the chief up there about was okay. So you use AI. What do you do for a use of force report? Now, use of force is not to go down a rabbit hole, but it's about officer perception, which AI technology is not aligned with your perception. So, like in my mind, you know, um, it's problematic to be using AI for that type of report. And, their answer was, well, we just have them review it and then we have them review the body worn camera afterwards. So, there's a couple issues, technical issues with that as well that could subject people to liability. So another component of that negativity on AI report writing.
Well, with the BDWC, with all the footage that's sitting around in stored capacity, I guess AI can help analyze,
Yeah.
in a faster way,
So not
the
interrupt
kinds
you.
of.
AI is used in Axon to do redaction for body worn camera. So imagery and then audio is more a manual process, but it is AI for visual redactions in body worn camera.
All right. Great. All right. And finally, I think we're running out of time here, but just from when we talked about the role of education in law enforcement, would you say it's expected these days that candidates for a law enforcement degree would have a bachelor's degree, or is it still, possible to get hired without that? And what is the role of a master's degree these days in policing?
But the minimum requirement is a GED or a high school degree to be a
Hmm.
police officer in the state. Um, do I think officers coming on should have a degree? It's ideal, yes. What's the function of a master's degree? Kind of indicated before. If you take a master's program, when I attended Salem, uh, I have good memories of Salem because it demanded me to do things, and those things helped me professionally because it made me a better thinker, right? So that's if you go into a master's program today, unfortunately, I think a lot of times it's driven by a pay motivation because agencies have compensation tied to a degree. But really, if you spend the time and effort in your master's program to develop your critical thinking skills and your writing skills, it's going to benefit your career. And that's how I would see that master's degree. If you're going into that program as students, that's the right mindset to have.
So it's very important also what programs you apply to and which one you ultimately choose to attend, what their emphases are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right.
For state police, we also, our minimum requirement is GED, high school diploma. At some point in the near future, our colonel is currently going to change it. You're going to need 60 credits, so an associate's. As far as a master's degree, obviously higher education is great, allows you to teach, allows you to, like the captain said, critically think. What we're getting, where I think the colonel, his thinking was we're going to require more schooling because currently through our process, we're getting a lot of people that are having a hard time with common sense and comprehension in our academy. And it's becoming an issue where we have to seek alternative measures on the weekend to help people to pass tests or get extra help. So that's kind of where we're at. I think that's why he's changing it. So I don't know. That's just my take on that.
Okay. All right. Listen, do any of the students have anything further to add or ask? I want to be sure, well, to mention two things to the students. There is a discussion thread that follows up on this presentation, so be sure to look at the Canvas website and look at the due dates for both your post and a response to another student's post. Usually I make it in respectful disagreement to make it more interesting. So, and I mentioned that the next class meeting is going to be April 13th instead of April 6th. So please take note of that. And I mainly at this point want to thank our panelists for really insightful and interesting, in so many ways, insights into law enforcement, the potential for law enforcement as a career, and at the different levels, in the different departments at the local level. And we want to really thank you all for coming today and for joining us and for sharing, literally your decades of experience and insight with us today. So, yeah, I just want to thank everyone very much for a very fruitful session.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Medcheck. Let me just say to the kids listening, the students listening, it's a rewarding career. It is an extremely difficult job. You do have to do soul searching and really decide if it's the path for you. But in 2026, which is unlike years past, if you don't like the job when you do it, people are just changing gears and doing it. So do your best to understand what you're getting into. It is a really hard job, but it's rewarding. It's financially rewarding. It's rewarding in terms of your general well-being, but it's a hard job, and everybody should understand that there's an extreme expectation that should be there because that's how important this job is in society. And good luck to all of you. I wish everybody luck. Thank you, Dr. Medcheck, for having me, and it's nice to hear everybody else talk about the same type of stuff as well.
It was a real pleasure to have all of you. Thank you all for coming.
Okay, take care. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Julia?
Hello? Yeah, so the discussion question that I just had a question about the discussion question, the first one we had, I forget the name of it. I responded to the two or three people that I was supposed to do. I know I did it late. I didn't know if
Uh,
that was graded yet.
are you talking about the self-introductions? Maybe that
Hold on,
one.
let me get that one up. I'm sorry.
This new one, there's a requirement to just to respond to one other student. But you know what? I think I'm going to ask if you can email me separately on this, okay?
Okay.
And I'll deal with it separately from an email. But for everyone else, look for the new discussion thread that's part of the current unit that's due before our next class meeting, and we'll go from here. Okay? Okay. Have a good afternoon, everybody.
Thank you very much. Have a good one.
Hi, Professor.
Bye bye. We'll see you.
No, I have.
Bye. Thank you.
Excuse
I
me?
wanted to speak to you for like 2 minutes.
Oh, okay, sure. About what?
Um, I it's because for like I had a personal issue going on and I kind of want to wait until the last to leave so I can further explain.
Well, maybe, you know what? Maybe, all right. If you feel comfortable about it, you could also email me about it if you feel more comfortable.
It was just well, yeah, I'll email you more in depth. It's just in regards to some of the work I missed in March. I had a I had a last minute family out of the country I had to take because my grandpa was
Mhm.
really sick in Honduras. Um,
Um,
and I was there for about 2 weeks. That's the last meeting that we had. That's why I couldn't attend because I was flying. Like I was in the midst of, I was still in Honduras, and it's just been a really, really tough month for me and my family because my grandpa is dying, unfortunately.
Oh, I'm
So,
sorry to hear that. Yeah, but any work you missed, you can make up. And in
oh,
this case, there probably would not be credits taken off if it's a family illness situation. So I would encourage you to make everything up.
okay.
All
Yeah.
right. But why don't you email me in more detail if you like about it also
Yeah. Okay.
as you're
Perfect.
progressing. But do make up everything that you can, and then I will accept it. And probably remind me that without taking credits off because of the overall situation. All
Okay.
right?
Perfect. All right. Thank you
Okay,
so
you're
much.
welcome. Okay.